Hello class, thank you for joining me. Today's lesson is going to be on the cytoskeleton, which is essentially what keeps the cell together and what helps it become one unit, as without it, it would just, dissolve into mush, separate. So now this lesson is going to be essentially what the function of the cytoskeleton is, as well as the many parts that make up it. So let's get started. If you were to remove all the organelles from a cell, which if you recall, organelles are like the organs of an organism, yes, a lot of organ talk, inside of the cell, such as the mitochondria or the nucleus. Would the plasma membrane and the cytoplasm be the only components left? No. Within the cytoplasm, which is the gooey stuff inside the actual cell, there would be ions and organic molecules, plus a network of proteins and fibers that help maintain the cell's shape, secure some organelles in specific positions, and allow cytoplasm and vesicles to move within the cell, and enable cells within the multicellular organisms to move. Collectively, scientists call this network of protein fibers the cytoskeleton. There are three types of fibers within the cytoskeleton: the microfilaments, the intermediate filaments, and the microtubules. Let's go over examples of each. And here's a picture of the intermediate filaments, the microfilaments, and microtubules. Microtubules actually, I believe, at least the structure of microtubules perform a significant function in mitosis, which we will discuss. I have several, probably a few lessons later. Microfilaments. Of the three types of protein fibers in the cytoskeleton, microfilaments are the narrowest, which would be these right here, the green things. They function in cellular movement, have a diameter of about 7 nanometers, and are comprised of two globular protein intertwined strands, which we call actin. For this reason, we also call microfilaments actin filaments. And here is I guess zoom and look at them. Kind of look like they're made out of beads, which are the filaments. Oh, actually, sorry, the strings are the filaments. The beads are the actin subunits. ATP powers actin to assemble its filamentous form, which serves as a track for the movement of a motor protein we call myosin. By the way, ATP is basically the energy structure of life. Without ATP, nothing organic can do anything, and we'll discuss that in a later section. This enables actin to engage in cellular events requiring motion, such as cell division in eukaryotic cells and cytoplasmic streaming, which is the cell cytoplasm circular movement in plant cells. And if you recall, well, maybe you don't, I think we briefly went over a difference between animal and plant cells, that they can and do differ quite a bit. Now, where were we? Actin and myosin are plentiful in muscle cells. When your actin and myosin filaments slide past each other, your muscles contract, basically anytime you move. Microfilaments also provide some rigidity and shape to the cell. They can depolymerize or disassemble and reform quickly, thus enabling a cell to change its shape and move. White blood cells, which is your body's infection-fighting cells, make good use of this ability. They can move to an infection site and phagocytize the pathogen. Sorry, sometimes I have trouble speaking, but anybody who has anybody who's been with me for a while knows that. Then we have the intermediate filaments. Several strands of fibrous proteins that are wound together comprise intermediate filaments. Cytoskeleton elements get their name from the fact that their diameter, which is 8 to 10 nanometers, is between those of microfilaments and microtubules. The intermediate filaments have no role in cell movement, as opposed to these, which do help the cell move, which I believe things like flagella are made out of these. Anyway, their function is purely structural. They bear tension, thus maintain the cell's shape and anchor the nucleus to other organelles in place, similar to the bones of an endoskeleton creature, such as you and me. I don't know if I guess the closest thing to an exoskeleton example would be like plant cells that have a cell wall, which no other cells do. So I guess that's the closest thing to an example. And of course, we haven't discussed this yet, but if you take any kind of like high school, maybe even middle school biology, you remember that endoskeleton means the skeleton inside the creature, and exoskeleton is outside the creature, such as a lobster or a beetle. The intermediate filaments are the most diverse group of cytoskeletal elements. Several fibrous protein types are in the intermediate filament. You are probably most familiar with keratin, the fibrous protein that strengthens your hair, nails, and skin's epidermis. Epidermis. Epi means outside, so that'd be like the skin that you see and touch. Now we have microtubules. As their name implies, microtubules are small hollow tubes, polymerized diameters of alpha tubulin and beta tubulin. Two globular proteins comprise the microtubules' walls. With a diameter of about 25 nanometers, microtubules are cytoskeleton's widest components. They help the cell resist compression, provide a track along which vesicles move through the cell, and pull replicated chromosomes to opposite ends of a divided cell. Like microfilaments, microtubules can disassemble and reform quickly. Like I said earlier, it helps in mitosis, which is basically cell division, creating new cells, new copies of cells. And by the way, when it says to resist compression, it means like when you press down on a cell, it doesn't just burst. Microtubules are also the structural element of Flagella, Cilia, and Centrosome. Okay, I apparently misremembered. Flagella is in microtubules, not microfilaments. My bad. The latter are the centrosomes, two perpendicular bodies. Again, that's in cell division. In animal cells, the centrosomes is the microtubules organization center. In eukaryotic cells, Flagella and Cilia are quite different structurally from their counterparts in prokaryotic, as we discussed below. Alright, now the flagella, or singular flagellum, are long hair-like structures that extend from the plasma membrane and enable the entire cell to move. For example, sperm, or euglena, and some prokaryotes. When present, the cell has just one flagellum, or a few flagella. However, when cilia, or singular cilium, are present, many of them extend along the plasma membrane's entire surface. They are short, hair-like structures that move entire cells, such as paramecia, or substances along the cell's outer surface. For example, the cilia of cells lining the fallopian tubes that move the ovum towards the uterus, or cilia lining the cells of the respiratory tract that trap particular matter and move it towards your nostrils. I also believe that the intestines, I have to verify, but intestines do have little hair-like protrusions. I don't know if those are cilia or not, but they're very similar, as they're not cilia. Despite their differences in length and numbers, flagella and cilia share a common structural arrangement in microtubules called a 9+2 array. This is appropriately named because a single flagellum or cilium is made up of a ring of 9 microtubule doublets, surrounding a single microtubule doublet in the center, and there's a photo right here, about 30 nanometers long. You can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 9 pair, and then 2 in the middle. And I believe these are just if you can look closely, these are connecting to all these. Okay, that should do it for all that, and because the next lesson is just how everything works together in a cell, this now is going to be the survey of what makes prokaryotes, like bacteria for instance, animal cells and plant cells different. Animal cells and plant cells are both eukaryotes, as they have things like organelles, but animal cells and plant cells can and do differ wildly. And we can go through all these. All three have a plasma membrane, which is basically it separates them from the external environment. Think of it as the skin. All of them have cytoplasm. Think of it as your keratin, which basically is that in essence that goo, I guess, that separates basically everything, keeps everything from rubbing against each other. Yeah, plant animal cells have a nucleus, but prokaryotes do not, and that's because prokaryotes do not have organelles. Prokaryotes just have their DNA strands inside themselves that just kind of go in there, just kind of move in there, like spaghetti, I guess. While plant animal cells have nucleus that keep their DNA in one place. Ribosomes, which create protein, are all in all three. The ribosomes are not technically organelles, they're something different, that's why they're in eukaryotes. Mitochondria, which basically create the ATP, are in animal and plant cells. They're not in prokaryotes because the prokaryotes have everything moves through it via osmosis, in a way, and that's why they don't need it because they can just get from the environment. Peroxisomes oxidize and thus break down fatty acids and amino acids. Again, prokaryotes do not because they allow things to pass through easily, but animal cells and plant cells do. Vesicles and vacuoles, again, same thing here. No, they don't have any organelle structures. Centrosome, which is the unspecified role in cell division in animal cells. Microtubules source in animal cells, but it says animal cells specifically, not plant cells and not prokaryotes. I believe we go into more detail why cells don't, but it's essentially the way they grow and reproduce. The reason they're having it, I mean. Lysosomes, digestion of macromolecules, recycling of worn-out organelles. Prokaryotes don't, for the same reason I said earlier. Now, some plant cells do. It really depends on the plant. I believe like Venus flytraps do, for instance, but not all plants. And of course, animal cells do. The cell wall. Animal cells do not. That's why they're so squishy, if you will. Like, that's why your skin's so squishy, not hard. But prokaryotes do, but really only peptidoglycan. And cells do, which is primary cellulose. And yes, that cellulose that makes wood. The chloroplast, that's only in plant cells. That's the green part of the plant that absorbs sunlight in photosynthesis. The endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER, if you remember that. There's the smooth and the rough. Both plants and animals do, cells do, but prokaryotes do not. The Golgi apparatus, same thing here. Plants and animals do, prokaryotes do not, because prokaryotes do not have organelles. The cytoskeleton, all three do. We were just discussing that. The flagella, some. The only ones that don't are plant sperm cells, which is pollen, or at least inside the pollen. And cilia, some animals and plant cells, some animal and prokaryotes do, but not plant cells. All right. And that concludes our lesson for today. Next lesson we'll be talking about is the connection between cells and cellular activities, such as, connecting to one another and exchanging DNA with other cells that need it, and all that good stuff. So just want to thank you all very much for joining me. I hope to see you again. Have a wonderful day, and God bless.